when we are finishing the Africa month, it's our last day of May month, which was our Africa month. And I also hope that in terms of African countries, we are able to communicate with our African friends or Africa people that are residing in our areas and try to show them how bad it is for them to be realized and recognize that they are not good enough to be with us in our country, because they bring lots and lots
Recording
of
stopped.
very, very uncalled for things like these Hong Kongs, things that are being sold in our shops, and also these drugs and all these funny things. But really, we are not people that don't like them, but it's just their deeds that we don't go with them. I also welcome you, knowing that we had a very, very successful post-budget vote program of the minister, and it was at a high level yesterday. The hall was full to capacity, and it was a very strategic program. We wish to thank the department, the minister, and the deputy minister and their entourage by being innovative and creative in terms of taking the Ilanga or Kalanga communities into their 100 years of centenary, combine that with the post-budget vote. It was in terms of the older people, which we are going to start with the bill for the older person in terms of our program on Friday. Thanks ever so much, honorable members and officials, in terms of good work that we are doing throughout. You've been there for us and with the department, and you try your level best to squeeze yourselves, even if sometimes you are too much stretched to other things. I also wish you a very happy Youth Month, which will be started tomorrow. And by that time, we'll be going around, as I have said, we'll be in the province of Limpopo. I hope everyone will also enjoy, especially the mothers that have youth at their homes. Explain what does this thing, Youth Month, means to them. Now, I was surprised, whilst I'm a politician, in terms of thinking that I am, but when I asked my friend, what does this mean in terms of the youth? He said, no, she doesn't know about it. I had to sit down and try to give the background of what does this Youth Month mean. So I wish all of the parents that are here, mothers and fathers that are here, grandfathers and grandmothers, to try and educate, cascade down the information with their grands, at least just to have a background of what is it. Because these model schools don't care about these months that we are honoring Tina as people that are staying in South Africa. So they don't even know what does that mean. So with those few words, I wish to welcome everyone in the meeting. I hope we will be fine. And we had a very, very elaborative budget vote yesterday. I laughed at other things from our colleagues when we have to be on the grandstand and we had to at least convince people what is it that we think is supposed to happen in the portfolio committee okanye in the department. Thanks ever so much. Those words were just welcoming words. Let's go to the business of the day. Lindy, I can see that the number has increased now to 30, so it means other people have tried to join. So can we go straight to check who is in the meeting so as to be able to know whether do we correct or not? Lindy, let's give over that opportunity to assist us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I wish to greet you, members of my portfolio committee, the minister with us, colleagues from the department, and my colleagues from Parliament. Today, Chair, is the 31st of May 2023. I wish to confirm the following members that are in attendance of this committee meeting. We have you, Chair, of this committee, Member Mvana. We have Member Abrahams. We have Member Vanda Merwe. We have Member Masango. We have Member Aris. We have Member Mare. We have Member Briette, Chair, that is with us. So can I proceed to apologies so that we know we are done? Or do you want me to pause?
Yes, proceed with apologies.
Okay, Chair. Also, Chair, you've got your entourage support team in this meeting to support you, Chair. Yoli Siavuya, Fungile, and Tandi, Chair. We have the following apologies. Member Pilangulu indicated that she's en routing to Polokwane. She will land at 10:30. As soon as she lands, she will join the meeting at 10:30. Also, Chair, Member Stock is not available today. She's also attending a joint standing committee on intelligence, so she won't be with us. I think, Chair, the standing apology from Member Sukars is also, I think she will also be submitting her apology because she's no longer been attending the meetings. So I'm expecting her apology. So, Chair, those are the apologies and members in attendance. Thank you very much, Chair.
I didn't hear you clearly in terms of Honorable Suker's apology.
Yeah, Member Sukaras attends the section 194 meeting. She yes, she always submit a apology sometimes after 10, so she's been attending that committee, Chair. So I might get it at any time soon.
Okay. Sure. Now it's clear. Thank you ever so much, Lindy.
Thank you.
And then from the side of the officials, Mr. Mchunu. Clinton.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and yes. Honorable members. I am audible. Thank you very much. Yes, I wish to, my apologies, I just missed the brief introduction. I wish to indicate that the department is here, including its agencies, and we are also, I know that the minister has a meeting to attend this morning, but I did see her on the platform. But I just wanted to indicate that we are here, Honorable Chair, and ready to make the presentation to yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhunu. And what about the DM? Is DM present with us?
I think we expected the DM to be here. I will just confirm. I'll just confirm very quickly, Honorable Chair, and advise.
Because now that the minister is not with us for now, which she has done the apology, I thought that the DM will be with us so as to be able to be given a platform and welcome us.
Maybe, Honorable Chair, I know the Minister is here. I know she's also in another meeting. I see she's logged on. I don't see the Deputy Minister. I've just tried to reach out now. Thanks. With the response, but maybe we could check with Minister if she's able to speak now or a little later. If not, my recommendation would be, or I think the Minister's here. Minister?
Yes, hello.
If she's here.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Linton, for that. Let's take for granted that the Deputy Minister will also join. I'm happy that the Minister is with us so as to just give herself time to give a political overview. And then if she wants to be released, she's free to leave at any time. Thanks. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and a good morning to members of the Portfolio Committee, yourself, and everyone who is in the meeting. Firstly, I must thank you for attending.
I'm sorry, Minister.
Hello?
Minister. Hello. We usually adopt the agenda before you, but I know for a fact that you are rushing for time, so as to be
No,
finished.
Chairperson, you can go ahead and adopt the agenda and all. I'm still here. It's just a network problem. We have load shedding, so but I think you can go on with your usual administrative issues. I am here.
Okay. I've already commended the innovative strategy of your department, your team, the way that you handled the function of yesterday of the older person. I couldn't believe it when I got into the hall, when the hall was full to capacity, whilst it was raining and it was cold. Well done, well done. We are giving you a big round of applause in terms of the programs. It was very, very unique, something that you have just thought of it to just integrate the centenary of Kualanga and with your post budget vote program. Thanks ever so much. We sometimes, don't praise one another and tell one another whilst she's alive. And when we are in their funerals, we start to say, thanks ever so much. I was happy and I appreciated the way you handled your program with your entourage. Thanks ever so much, Minister. Let's go into the agenda. Can you assist us? We are done with the apologies. We are on item of adoption of the agenda, and the Minister is going to give the political overview and be released after that. Today, we've got one item, which is briefing by the department in terms of fourth quarter and now of fifth term. And then the next item, we'll deliberate and discuss it and comment as usual. There are minutes, that were outstanding in the previous meeting, which we requested the secretary to bring them back. And then those minutes, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 sets, which we will have to look at them and also request Lindy to update us in terms. That item is not here, but we'll request Lindy to give us the update in terms of the public hearings, which are supposed to start on Friday. Can we adopt the agenda as proposed, honorable members?
Chairperson, it's Bridget Masango. I'd like to adopt the agenda as proposed. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bridget. Any seconder to the adoption of the agenda?
Seconded, Chair Alexandra Abrams.
Thank you very much, Alex. Then it means we have to go straight to Minister and give her an opportunity to give an overview. Thanks. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I'll ask that I don't put the video. The network is very, very bad here. If it gets better, I will do so. A very good morning, as I had said earlier on, to everybody, and I wish to thank you for having braved the cold yesterday and be with the elderly people when you yourself is coming out of flu, but it was a worthwhile engagement. I do want to say, Chairperson, that the state of the elderly people in South Africa needs all of us to really put our heads together and look at what else we need to do, particularly in responding to many of them who are finding themselves being abused even in their own homes. Many of them who it's their homes, but their homes are taken over sometimes by very unruly and unscrupulous family members. And I believe that with the programs of the department, I don't think they are adequate. And with the programs of the forum itself, the Older Persons Forum, I think maybe members might want to take the opportunity to engage with these forums in all the provinces through your constituency offices, because the elderly people do not even know many times that there is a constituency office, and they don't even know that they can go to the constituency office and raise some of their issues. It's just about how we can step up on that one, both from executive point of view, but also members of parliament across the political spectrum to look at this issue. Yesterday's event, if I may, also indicates that it was an event that also would be celebrating KwaLanga. And being there and hearing people who've been in KwaLanga in the many, many years of their lives, and the history of KwaLanga, and showing some of the pictures of how people were dumped there in the beginning because they were being thrown out of the city area, is something that we must not forget. Because, Chairperson, when you also talk about young people who do not know the history, it's our fault. We have to be the ones who tell them. We can't expect them to know this history from nowhere unless we tell them of this history. We expose them to this history, and we take them to these places where the history can be told by these elderly people. In fact, yesterday, honorable members, I was a bit disappointed, and I thought, hey, if at the time the elderly people had been waiting, our communications should have been very quick and just engage with them, because they had the recording machinery and everything, the equipment, not machinery. They could have used that time to actually get the stories of these people who were in that hall yesterday. But anyway, I'm not about that here. I wish to also thank you all for your comments and everything at the budget debate yesterday. As I usually say, we take seriously all the comments that are made. We might jab at each other from time to time, but I personally take the comments that are made by members of the portfolio committee very seriously, because I take them to be genuine concerns which they are raising with regard to our work as a department, but also with regard to our service delivery. And therefore, when we come here now and present the fourth quarter report of the Department of Social Development for 2022-2023 financial year, I take it also that this is the platform where you are supposed to really scrutinize, you are really supposed to get deeper into the presentations that we present to you here. And so in the present, because the presentations provide an opportunity to reflect and account on the objectives and commitments we have made to this House and to fellow South Africans as reflected in our 2022-23 APP. And of course, the challenge here is that we are already in the first quarter of 2023-2024 and the overlap thereof. And I always say to the department, I wish that when we get to the next financial year, we should have had an opportunity of looking at the previous year. And of course, the fourth quarter comes now, but nothing has stopped us, which we have done. Nothing has stopped us from looking at the first, the second, and the third quarter, so that by the time we are implementing, we are finalizing the APP and presenting the APP and then coming back with the operational plans, we should be able to say what were the strengths, what were the weaknesses, what were the things that we didn't do right. And when we talk about the performances thereof, you will see that the first quarter DSD achieved 80%, and for the quarter 2 and 3, the department achieved 74% and 84% respectively. The issue for me here, honorable members, I'm saying to the department, I don't want to be just counting the percentages. I want more to see the impact of the work that has been done. It shouldn't be about the percentage of the performance. It should be more also about the impact of the performance of the department. And therefore, while the 80% performance of the fourth quarter is 4% decline when compared to the performance of quarter 3, most work reported as not achieved in quarter 4 has been already achieved in the previous quarters. And so this will be reflected better and in detail when the department presents the annual report 2022-2023. We've taken time to reflect on the areas of our work where we are lagging behind, and you will see improvements in the performance of those areas in the current financial year. And therefore, I also would like to welcome your constructive inputs, as always, as they assist us to be responsive to issues confronting our constituencies. And at this time, Chairperson, I do want to indicate that the quarter 4, we will also have to look at the quarter 1 of this financial year. You'll have to look at that to see whether these things that we are talking about as improvements, can you feel them? Can you just feel us in the work that we do? As I now hand over to the DG and the team to make a presentation, I want to indicate, Chair, that I'm reading a very interesting book by Xi Jinping, the president of China, which is Up and Out of Poverty. It is very, very exciting to see how other countries within not a short period of time, but if you look at the things that they've done and to lift people out of poverty, and in many instances, it's not complicated things that they did. All they made sure was to just be in one chorus. All they do was to make sure that they have basic proficiency of officials. All they do was to focus on clean government. All they do is they talk about the public service. You know, these are the things that, in my view, collectively, us as South Africans should start looking at. How do we, even though we come from different political parties, but there are certain things that are common to us as we sit here in our different homes. It's about getting our people out of poverty. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister. Yeah, we are listening to what you. It's not only to us, but it's also. So let's give over to Mr. Mchunu.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members and Honorable Minister, for the opportunity. Let me start by saying Asubuhi njema na mwezi mwema wa Afrika. That is good morning and happy Africa month in Swahili. And I deliberately decided to say it in Swahili because it's one of the African languages that is very important, and I'm personally studying. During Africa Month, I think it's important that we recognize our Africanness through our language and our culture. So I thought that I would greet you in that language, but also I thought that I would remind honorable members and indeed the committee and all participants in this meeting that it was in Africa Month where the Department of Social Development received a Good Practice Award for having the best social security systems in Africa. And of course, the main category was around the child support grant and the extensions that we've added to the child support grant. But we also received a number of certificates of merit through SASSA. And of course, the prestigious award was received by the department in terms of the work done. And you can really see the shift that we've created through the investment that we make in children through the child support grants. And of course, the argument is still very much so that it's not at the level that it should be in terms of quantum. But these are areas we're working towards. But in terms of reach, certainly, I think we've done a fantastic job from an access point of view. And we continue to do that work. I think it's important that we acknowledge that and we highlight that because as a result of receiving this award, we've had a number of countries that have subsequently come and said, well, we want to come and learn and assist, or rather get assistance from you on how you are implementing cash transfers, what systems you're using, what technology you're using, etc. So I thought, let me just start by highlighting that. And of course, also highlighting Honorable Chair and Honorable Members that it is indeed the week that we're in Child Protection Week. And the Minister launched this on Friday and we'll close it off in Mpumalanga this Sunday. And I do think that some members were invited to attend that. I think this is an important time for us to also acknowledge the role that children play in society and the level and extent to which we provide both care and protection to children. And so we're celebrating children this week and the important voice that they have in society as well. And we are also, of course, whilst it may be a week, Child Protection Week or Child Protection Month, we have a 365-day program that talks to programmatic activities that are taking place on a daily basis countrywide, largely led by provinces when it comes to this piece of work. So thank you very much for that. Let me just also add, Honorable Chair, before I forget that today also marks the start, and this, I'm giving you this contextual analysis because I think it's important. Today marks the start of our consultations, our public consultations on the policy on welfare services for persons with disabilities, and we're starting in Gauteng. And we're also proceeding with the provincial consultations on the fundraising amendment bill. You were in the Western Cape next week. This week we did a few provinces as well, 2 provinces or so. And indeed, thank you. And the Honorable Chair did highlight the importance of the budget vote that was put forward. So, Honorable Chair, if we could go to slide 1 of the presentation, and Honorable Members, I've asked Rogers and Tabani to share the presentation from their side. Just confirm, Tabani, that it is now on the screen. Let me just make a few comments.
Now on the screen.
Okay, let me make a few comments that talk to slide 1 very briefly. Of course, this presentation is really the last quarter of the financial year 22-23 of our APP, which is January to March. Of course, it also marks the last quarter of the administration, or at least the 6th administration, or the final year of the 6th administration, which is 23-24. I think I just wanted to really highlight a few things in terms of the context to which we present this presentation. Given the low economic growth outlook, we still have the challenges of poverty exacerbating in the country. And I think if you look at the levels of unemployment in the last quarter, which was still quite high, you can draw a level of a sort of correlation with the number of people that would have applied for grants during that quarter, and you would have seen an increase during that quarter. So it means that when people don't have work, their sort of next point of call is the grant or the SASSA lines. And of course, we're trying to change the mindset, but you have to understand that without the economy performing at the level that it ought to, it becomes a bit difficult for people to survive, and hence they have to come through to the grant line. So the low economic outlook was still low, at least within the quarter in question. Of course, we'll also experience the height of load shedding during that quarter. And again, there were some floods that took place in the Eastern Cape and in KZN. And I think the aspect of load shedding was a bit of a challenge in that it caused serious social impact, not just to our services, but also to some extent to our offices. And we have made some contingent measures in that effect to address some of the challenges. Then I also just wanted to highlight that we are, you would recall that it was during this quarter actually that we participated in the FATF meetings, where essentially the country was grey listed. And I must say that we're making significant progress in getting off the grey list. We've set ourselves a target of 12 months to get out of the grey listing as a country. And one of the recommendations obviously talks to the extent to which we manage NPOs, and I think that's important. But we are making quite significant progress to that effect. And this, of course, we know, has a number of risks attached to it, and has some level of economic impact. But I think we're working progressively towards that. Then I wanted to just add that it's quite important that this presentation is viewed in terms of, well, at least we look at the previous 3 quarters in looking at this particular presentation, and you'd see how there are some areas of achievement and non-achievement. So you'd recall that in the first quarter, we received 80% of our targets. At least we achieved 80% of our targets. In the second quarter, we dropped slightly to 74%. You can go to the next slide. Siviwe, you can go to the next slide. In the second quarter, we reduced down to about 74%, which is a 6% decline. Go to the other slide, the next one. Yeah. And then, of course, in the third quarter, we were at 84%, which is the highest for that financial year. About 16 targets not met. And the fourth quarter, which is the quarter in question, we achieved 80% of the targets that we set, which again shows a 4% decline from the previous quarter compared, at least compared to the third quarter. Now, although there was a slight decline in performance during the fourth quarter, there are some targets, and we can explain this. There are some targets which were rated as not achieved during the fourth quarter, and and are actually achieved in the annual report, which we are yet to present to the portfolio committee overall. And this is as a result of these targets having been overachieved in previous quarters. For example, if you look at the fourth quarter target to capacitate 200 social service practitioners, it was not achieved in quarter 4, as some of the provinces were trained in actually quarter 3 due to the availability, their availability at least at the time. And so it may mark as unachieved in Q4, but we've actually overachieved in that we've met the targets and beyond in the previous quarter. So we'll show in the annual report, that all provinces and the number of social service professions, for example, we had reached in 2022-23 financial year is actually overachieved, as I indicated. The same logic applies, and explanation is applied to the training of social workers on the adoption policy framework and strategy. Now, whilst there is a glaring sort of non-achievement of the targets in program 2 on social assistance, and I want to pay some attention here, and this relates to social security and specifically about the transfers of funds to SASSA for the payment of social grants. The non-achievement, it's important that we understand this, the non-achievement of this target gives an impression that social grants were not paid. It's not the case, or at least were not, at least some of these were not paid. It's not the case. The truth of the matter is that all eligible grant recipients receive their grants accordingly. In terms of the slogan that we use at SASSA, which is paying the right social grant to the right person at the right time and at the right place, always, Jali. The non-achievement relates largely to the fact that in the financial year, the Treasury, we had sort of imposed declared savings on the social relief of distress grants, the 350 grants, which reduced the annual allocation for social grants related to the 2022-2023 financial year. So it has absolutely nothing to do with us not having paid any person grants. We pay every month. We make sure that grants are paid. If grants are not paid, it is a result of challenges that would have been persistent, particularly in terms of eligibility criteria. That's why we're saying we pay eligible people grants on time and all the time. So that's the reason why we had this shortfall or this underspending, as it were, declared savings, if you like. Now, while our Q4 performance appears again to have declined with Q3, it's also important to state that when we come to present our annual reports, honorable members will realize that the DSD has not dropped the ball at all. Without preempting the presentation of the annual performance, I must indicate that we will retain and sustain an over above 80% achievement of our targets at the end of the entire financial year, but also moving into the current financial year that we are busy with. Now, I must indicate that, and I think the minister also spoke briefly to this, that whilst we may, attribute our improved performance to the guidance, in fact, we do attribute our improved performance to the guidance and inputs from this portfolio committee. And I think the minister did highlight that we take the questions that you pose, the comments and inputs that you provide, and the constructive manner, we take those to task. And you would see, honorable members, that indeed there is a shift that has happened. So we take this very serious and we build on them to improve our performance and the impact that we want to have on the ground. And our work is not only left to targets, as the minister indicated on the APP, but the true reflection is really measured by the impact that we derive in improving the quality of lives of people. And so, we're very conscious that whilst this 80% may look good, it's not the only measure that determines the impact that has been derived in terms of the quality of life of our people. So we can move to, let's go back to the previous slide. I just wanted to highlight where the areas of non-achievement are and achievement. So from 65 targets, you'd see that there are 13 targets that were not achieved and 52 that were essentially achieved. Then we can go to slide number 5. Let me get Thabani to talk to this slide and the next few slides. And when we get to program 1, he'll also deal with the aspects related to program 1. And then we'll move to the other colleagues to deal with the other presentations. Then we'll come in at the end to sort of wrap up. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I just thought, let me paint that picture very briefly. Let's go to slide 5, Thabani.
Thank you, Honorable Minister and Chairperson, as well as all the honorable members. Very good morning. Thanks, Acting TG, for the opening overview and Minister's opening remarks as well. I think Acting TG has indicated that there are about 13 areas where we did not fully meet the commitments that you have made. And broadly, from program 1 is issues of human capital management. Portfolio committee members do understand that one of the areas is about the government-wide strategy on employment, which we had committed to table it to cabinet by end of the financial year. It means we're hoping by Q4 this what would have achieved. However, this has not been tabled and presented to cabinet or submitted to cabinet. However, we've been able to submit it to the technical working group, but there's been work that has been done mainly in May and so forth, which then unfortunately remains outside the area that we wanted to do. And in the main, just like we have observed in the previous quarters, there are some of the issues because of the dependencies and some of the processes that remains outside our control when it comes to issues of legislation. So if you look at the legal services who then are responsible for these pieces of work in terms of processing of these legislations, the issue as well relates to the SASSA Amendment Bill, which we could not present as well or submit to Cabinet. Currently, the bill is being considered for a preliminary opinion by the Office of the State Law Advisor. And there are these other external dependencies in that the bill must first have a preliminary certification with legality and constitutionality before it can be approved by Cabinet. The second area of our legislation relates to the Victim Support Services Bill, which also could not be submitted to Cabinet by end of the financial year due to the delays in concluding the NETLAC consultations. And this has only been done. It's one of the areas that it was only on the 11th of May that the department then received a report from NETLAC following the consultations that we had, and the Cabinet processes or towards submitting to Cabinet is currently underway. And also the NPO Amendment Bill was withdrawn due to promulgation of the General Laws Amendment Act, which rendered the NPO bill absolute in this regard. Thirdly is the area that the acting DG had already spoken about, the issues of social assistance, which then creates the impression that as if we have not met this target is because of the numbers and things that gets in that particular place, but all the grants were paid to all the eligible grant recipients. Also, the areas that he has spoken to, I will not go to details, some of these targets that have already been met, including the issues of the training of social service professionals on the social behavioral change programs. We had a target of 142, but some of the properties withdrawn because they've already been trained in the previous quarter, so they couldn't be trained twice again. So this has been achieved because sometimes as we work with the provinces, they show their availability on the times beyond what we had planned. And once we do consult with them, but once they say they're available this time, because we understand as well how previously this hampers a time, because by the time you wait for the last quarter, more often the budget is already finished in their part. So at whatever opportunity that we get, we are able to proceed with what we have done. Also, when it comes to issues of the 90 social workers on the adoption, that was achieved as well, as this will be shown, especially when we come and present the annual reports. On social crime prevention and anti-substance abuse, we had a target to capture 2 provinces to implement the National Drug Master Plan. And this is one of the areas as well where we had already trained enough in the previous quarters, but because we are looking at the 4th quarter, it appears that we have not met the target. On the comprehensive social security, the area is regarding the white paper on the comprehensive social security, which was not developed because of some of the considerations that are being done, especially on the public comments, so that we are able to refine the green paper. The call for public comments is pending as government department, primarily the National Treasury and the Department of Employment and Labor, they still need to provide us with comments and inputs before e-cabinet is requested for approval, so that we are able to re-gazette this green paper for public comments. So, but we have started with the engagement with these government stakeholders, and this will be developed successfully, the white paper, after considering the public comments on the green paper. And we are, as this department, also recommitting ourselves to make sure that we are able to fast track this particular process, especially insofar as engagements with other government departments. One area as well is about the reviewed sustainable livelihood framework, which we could not submit to Cabinet. This has been presented, however, to the clusters, especially the technical working group, as well as the SPCHD cluster in those meetings, and this must go through the process before we take it to Cabinet. There are some 2 areas as well relating to on population development. One is related to adolescent sexual reproductive health and rights program improvement plan, which we could not finalize, as because the conference that we had on reproductive justice only took place in March, and which was the month when we are concluding the work of the 4th quarter. And as a result, that report could not then be concluded on time, so that we are then able to inform and draw that improvement plan, because it needs to be informed or built from that particular report of the conference. But currently, I can confirm to the honorable members that has already been done, and now by first quarter. We had a target to train 23 municipalities. In the final report, it will be shown that this has been overachieved, because some as well has been trained previously. It's only 2, so instead of 23, we're only able to train 2 because they were available at some point in time, but this will be shown as we come and present. The acting DG had asked me also to highlight then what are the areas where we were able to achieve. Under program 1, what then also is related to the entity oversight. We're able to have oversight engagement as part of our commitment with our entities, in particular the National Development Agency, the CDA, as well as our the Council of Social Service Professionals. So this has been able to do as our endeavor to implement the entity oversight framework that we have in the department. Secondly, strengthening our capacity as well to engage and manage donors as well as stakeholders. The department have a stakeholder and donor management strategy, which we continue to implement. And I'm sure as we close after 3 or 4 years, we'll then begin to evaluate it and see the impact that it has made. But currently, we do engagements as part of this, and we come up with reports. So there is a report that we are able to generate from various donors and stakeholders that we'll be having, and I'm sure even next week we'll be having some stakeholder engagement at the margins of the NCOP budget vote, and as part of doing that, and I'm sure the DG will make those announcements at the appropriate time. Also on the M&E, there are 2 areas. One, we continue then to as work now towards finalization on the development of this electronic M&E system. We were able then, the previous quarter, in the 3rd quarter, we presented to the honorable members to this committee that we have concluded the piloting. But the piloting was done also to say, what are the lessons that you are doing that? So in the 3rd quarter, we are able to use the results of the pilots to review the system itself. And it's now ready to being implemented. Our provincial counterparts are very excited about it. Some of the provinces are even moving ahead with implementing this, and we'll be presenting this next week to our provincial counterparts, especially as we'll be engaging with the heads of social development, so that we have a uniform implementation of this. Now we are ready to roll it out. So the system has been developed, and we are eager to come and present it as well to the honorable members when the invitation is being made. Also, we have finalized the concept document. We have been talking about the social welfare index. This has been done successfully, and is will also be now starting to cost it and see exactly how then we can implement it, so that we are able to have those measurements that we have been able to report on previously. I think acting DG, I might end up here and through you and ask my colleague, Mr. Ndaba, to take us through what is contained within the IT as well as the legal services. Through you, thank you so much, Chairperson, Mr. Ndaba.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Minister, and honorable members, as well as colleagues. My name is Khumbula Ndaba. I have two issues really to report on, and that is, the first one relates to information technology. Our target here was to report on systems integrated toward the realization of NSPs. What we achieved here, really, we produced a report on systems integration, which basically was developed and consulted with all the participating departments. This report was then presented and approved at HSDS. We've also acquired and registered the NSPs domain through CETA. Of course, the impact here, or in terms of what we want to see, is to have an integrated social protection system which promotes provision of social development services in an efficient and integrated manner. Perhaps to decode what is here, we have basically integrated quite a number of silo systems in the department. And of course, the work is ongoing. The whole idea is to have all the systems integrated. Those that are not compatible, they should be made compatible so that we can access all the information in the interest of our beneficiaries. Then, of course, the next one relates to the development of the draft social development bill. This bill was actually developed, refined, and validated, which was actually our target, and therefore this has been achieved. The second one is the development of draft regulations on older persons amendment bill. Now, these regulations have since been developed, and this process is well underway. From here, of course, we should actually finalize the regulations. Now, the last one, our target is to produce a draft amendment NTA bill. This bill has also been developed. Of course, there were complications in the process because there's a lot of consultation that is involved, a number of stakeholders that must be consulted. And sometimes we get delayed, but we are happy to report that notwithstanding all of these, the bill is now developed and we are actually on course. Thank you very much.
The next one, I'm sorry, the next area is then program 2, which we have already alluded to, which talks exactly how much were the transfers. So with the 62.7 billion that was available for SASSA administration, the department, as you can see, it was only a total of 52.9 billion, and we were able to provide the breakdown per each month. In January, it was 20.7. In February, it was 17.9 billion. In March, it was 14.3 billion, with totals then the 52.9, which appears less than what was projected and estimated to be around 62 million. During this financial year, there's been some adjustments as well in our baseline, and for example, the 6 billion that has been declared as savings in the 23-22 the E&E that was published in September last year, as well as the 3.7 that was also savings in the second adjustment, which then took place in March 2023. I'll now ask my colleague, Mr. Anthony Makoremita, to take us through some of the areas where we were able to achieve in so far as social security policies that we have committed ourselves to be processing in this particular quarter. Mr. Makoremita.
Good morning, Minister and Honorable Chair, and colleagues from the program Social Security and Administration. We are mainly focusing on the development of policies. So in the fourth quarter, we have had some progress in terms of the policy on linking children grant beneficiaries to government services. And our main focus has been to conduct consultations with various stakeholders, including beneficiaries, civil society organizations, some research institutions, including the presentation that we have also done to this portfolio committee, wherein we needed to unpack this policy work that we are doing. some forums have also been consulted, for example, the National Child Care and Protection Forum, and we have developed the consultation reports. The work on the basic income support is ongoing, and as part of the prioritization of this policy work, we have also engaged some stakeholders, and as indicated. The other policy area that we are dealing with, it's not moving slower. The other policy area refers to, can I be assisted with it here? The other policy area, Chairperson, relates to the policy on maternal support, which we have been busy with, and also the focus has been on engaging some stakeholders. And we're on the policy on voluntary cover for typical and informal sector workers. We have achieved this by our commitment to submit and present this to the social cluster, DG's forum, because what we need to do is for those with the ability to make some contributions to be able to do that. DDG Buthelezi has clarified where we are having challenges with regards to the development of the white paper on comprehensive social security, and this is one of the critical areas that Chairperson, we want to see some progress in the coming financial year. And I guess it's important to reflect that we need a public engagement on the recommendations that are contained in the green paper. But at the moment, we do have an in-government engagement that we need to have so that we can move this process forward. In terms of access to administrative justice, as you are aware, honorable members, the Tribunal for Social Assistance Appeals managed to adjudicate about 2,572 appeals during the fourth quarter, of which 711 were appeals adjudicated within 90 days. Of note here is to indicate that there's been a significant increase in the number of appeals that the tribunal is receiving. You recall the amendment to the Act that now allows direct access to the appeals that appellants can lodge directly to the tribunal. So that resulted in the increase in the number of appeals that were received, but some progress is being made in that regard. The last aspect in Program 3, Chair, relates to the Inspectorate for Social Assistance. Some work is being done in that regard, and the commitment was to produce an audit report on disability grant medical review processes. So that report was concluded, and we are on track in this space of work. So I would like to stop here and hand over to my colleague through you, Chair, Ms. Isabella Sikawana, talking to Welfare Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Good morning, Chairperson, honorable members, Minister, and my colleagues. I'm going to present Program 4, and as I normally say, my start is, it's a big program with 23 targets, and I think I always try to find an approach, towards presentation of this program without laboring it, with an understanding that members have gone through the slides. Maybe I should start by indicating that this program creates an enabling environment for provision of equitable developmental welfare services, and it does it through policy development, but also partnering with, other stakeholders to ensure that, we realize what we want to realize. I want to indicate that there are 7 sub-programs. I'm going to include people with disability because it's part of the sub-program. And It's HIV and AIDS, it's children's services, it's children's legislation and families, older persons and professional social services, social crime prevention and anti-substance abuse, office on the rights of a child, where it promotes, the voice and participation of children. And as I said earlier, also people with disability. Now, in terms of, the mandate of, us as a program located within the national office, the first one is policy and legislative development. But having said that, it is important to know that we need to capacitate, stakeholders for them to be able, to implement the legislation. In other words, there should be common understanding of the legislation and be able, to translate the legislation and policies, into programs which will make impact in the lives of the people. So the second aspect is about capacity building, and the third aspect is about monitoring. But we also look at those critical areas where we do a program implementation, and we therefore work very closely with our provinces and other stakeholders in this regard. Now, I have clustered our achievements in terms of the 4 areas that I have spoken about. The first one, in terms of policy development, one of the key targets that we have achieved for this Q4 is the white paper on families, which has been presented to technical working group. And this white paper is very critical because it is a guide, to ensure that we strengthen our families. And we all agree that if the family is weak, we find ourselves in a situation that we are in, where, we've got increase in social ills. So if we conclude this white paper, we'll be able, to implement it and translate it into programs, and also ensure that there is coordinated approach in terms of, family programs. The second one that we had planned to do is policy on prevention of the treatment for substance use disorders, which we could not achieve the target. We wanted to take this policy to cabinet, but because we had to incorporate new policy provision on alcohol harm reduction fund, we had to reconsult on the policy, and therefore this financial year will be taking the policy to cabinet. Now, when we come to capacity building, there are quite a number of activities that we have embarked on in terms of ensuring that, people understand our policies, they understand, the programs that we are implementing, so that they can be able, to implement them. And I must say that this capacity building is really yielding a lot of very good results. Like, for example, the capacitation on the Children's Act. We have seen a great improvement in terms of the quality of reports that are being produced by social workers when presenting, to the courts. But secondly, it has also built confidence in social workers to operate within a multidisciplinary approach, because they are dealing with, they are working together with other professionals. So they are able to assert themselves because they understand, the mandate, the legislation that carries their mandate. So I just want to really reiterate that. And we have seen, reports not being turned back by courts, because of the quality. People, the social workers are able to apply the legislation. And also what is critical is the common interpretation of the legislation. It also assisted in that regard. We also have, capacitated people on the implementation of National Drug Master Plan, which is very critical when we want to deal with the issue of substance abuse. We need to tackle it, at local level, using the DDM model. And it is important that, people understand that what is the role of the people at local level, what is the role of, all stakeholders at different levels. So we've been able to do that. And the one that is also very critical, the capacity building that we did, is on the intersectoral policy on sheltering, which we have really targeted the 5 GBV hotspot districts. And this is it's a continuation of a target from previous years, where we also targeted some other areas. Hence, this year we targeted the 5 GB4, and we are very focused in our targeting hotspots, because we want to attack that and make sure that we maximize the impact. But we also We also capacitated treatment centers on the universal treatment curriculum so that we can be able to standardize the provision of services in the treatment centers. Now, when coming to the issue of monitoring is very key because it ensures that whatever policies and programs that we are having are being translated and they make a difference into the lives of people. So having capacitated people, we expect that implementation should happen. And as national office, it is important that we really monitor, the implementation of such policies. So we've been able, to achieve the targets such as monitoring implementation of community-based the community prevention and early intervention program. This is a program that we call RISIHA, which is very critical in terms of ensuring that we really empower our children at an early stage, orphans and vulnerable children at an early stage, so that they can be able, to move from vulnerability to resilience. We also monitor the implementation of Sinovuyo program, and I must indicate to members that during this Child Protection Week, our focus is on orphans and vulnerable children. And, we are saying that we are promoting prevention, and we have put RISIHA and Sinovuyo at the center. And we have had, people from the communities during this child protection saying that you need to upscale these programs because we have seen them, making changes in our lives. One of the parents said, she was with her daughter. I could not relate well with my daughter, but since we have been in this program of Sinovuyo, I know how to resolve conflict with my daughter. I know that I should spend quality time with my daughter. I know that money is not everything. When I also do budget, I need to also involve my daughter so that my daughter can understand. I have seen the relationship improving, since I have attended this program. So we have been, encouraged to ensure that we upscale both Sinovuyo and RISIHA program. Even with the RISIHA, there were people who were children, beneficiaries, who stood up and said that we are the product of Sinovuyo. As I am standing here, I'm now at a tertiary school because RISIHA has assisted me with regard to educational support in terms of me accessing, nutrition, in terms of psychosocial support, because there are peer pressures that I encountered as I was training this, I was on this journey. So we are encouraged to say that we really need to ensure that we upscale these programs and we strengthen them where possible to ensure that, we reach to more children, to avoid them getting deeper in the system, but, getting them, at an early intervention stage. We also monitored the implementation of intersectoral protocol on management of violence against children. So this is just a few monitoring that we have done. There are quite a number of areas that we have zoomed in. Now, when I want to talk to the implementation of the programs, where we have provided a core package of services to more than 11,900 orphans and vulnerable children. And we did this in partnership with the USAID and through the facilitators, because they are the ones that have been assigned to ensure that, they assist us in terms of facilitating these programs. And this program, as I'm talking, it is aimed at ensuring that it also kept the teenage pregnancy that we are talking about. So this is one of the few programs that we have implemented. The issue of anti-gangster and anti-gangster strategy, we have implemented it in high-risk districts, and we focused in Limpopo and Mpumalanga, because most of the time we focus in urban areas and neglect, those rural areas. So this is a continuation, because we've been implementing it throughout. In the previous years, we were in Western Cape, we were in other provinces. Therefore, for this last financial year, we focused on these two provinces. And thank you, Chairperson. There's a lot.
Mr. Netipale then is going to do the final program on program 5. And then through your chair, we'll then move to our expenditure reports.
Now, thanks very much. Greetings to the Minister and Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. the program 5 is the sweeping program, but it's a program that aims at creating vibrant and sustainable communities, individuals, and family through the implementation of community development program. Is much more broader, but I think I will just stick to what we planned and what we have achieved. We deal with programs that aim to alleviate poverty and hunger and malnutrition, and also ensure the enablement programs for non-profit organizations, especially the registration and the compliance monitoring, and coordinate the funding that happens in provinces. This quarter, we planned through the Special Project Innovation Program, we planned to achieve 176, over 176,000 work opportunities through the EPW program. We have surpassed it, and actually in this program, our wish is to go beyond 250,000 because we need to create that work opportunities in our country, and these are mostly young women and young men that are in this program. The second program were to produce a report on the state of the people in South Africa. If you look at what we do from profiling, mobilization, we have the clear picture in terms of what we are supposed to do in terms of that. That report has been produced. This report is the one we produced, and then it's supposed to be, we should to favor us with the report before the State of the Nation address, so that we know exactly what is happening. The programs on sustainable livelihood and food security, there were 3 targets that we supposed to achieve. One was partially because we're supposed to go to cabinet on the framework. We went up to the cluster, and we hope that this will be able to deal with it before the second quarter. We also were to link. You will realize that there was an issue with regards to linking those social protection beneficiaries to sustainable livelihood and economy. We have overachieved it. We planned for 20,000. We did just under 30,000. And also we are responsible for the provision of food to vulnerable individuals and households. And this is one of the programs that is doing well. We have provided over what we have achieved, and we provided a report. There's still a need though, because we see the snippets of the malnutrition, child hunger there and there, with the aim of us increasing the center feeding program to complement national school programs and dropping centers. The community development practice, where we go to communities and mobilize them for social cohesion, and also for us as government, begin to talk to people. What we planned to do there was to develop a national policy that was requested by most government department, which is National Community Development Policy. That policy will go to cabinet this financial year. We have sent it to the cluster for approval, and we have also on the ground, as part of capacitating our workers at a district level, we have trained over 295 community development practitioners on how they need to continually mobilize communities and do the right things and implement the norms and standards within communities. And also in line with the DDM, we went into 18 districts. One of the things that we are left behind is that we will do up to a provincial level only to find that districts are left behind. So together with the province, we were able to go to 18 districts to empower those people on the ground. With regard to youth, you are aware that we developed a policy, and one of the things that we've done is to produce an MA report in terms of that, and that will be contained well in terms of the detail of the report in the annual report. And we also continue with the skills development to ensure that our youth are employable, our youth, especially the vulnerable youth, are employable and are capacitated. With regard to the NPOs in the target, our plan was to, this is a service that we render at the National Department of Social Development. At national level, we render. So one of the things that we do, we make sure that we process these applications very speedily, fast. This is the plan, but most of the time, and we also processed a lot of reports that comes in terms of the NPOX, and we have finalized and promulgations of the General Laws Amendment Act. We are part of it as part of the anti-money laundering and the combating terrorism, and the regulations were also developed. We have to implement them in this financial year. You can see some of the graphs there. We're just indicating, you can see, if you look at the spread from Q1 up to Q4, everything we were receiving over 8,000 NPO applications. But towards the end of the year, we were receiving 5. It went from 8 to 6 and to 5. And you can see the registered there is about half of those were registered, which means there has been an increase on the errors or the failure rate in terms of how compliant a registration form should be. Similarly, this one, the second one is the report on what we received from them. In the first quarter, it was a lot. You will know that failure to submit reports will require us to deregister NPOs. So we are beginning those, and I think in this first quarter we'll see a lot of those. But you can see the decline similar, that we are receiving 17,000 the first quarter, and in the fourth quarter only 8.5 NPO submitted, which we said that our compliance rate is about 55% of those. Okay, expenditure.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm sure the acting CFO, Fanny, will then take us through that aspect, which is then the last section of our presentation. Fanny.
And honourable members. So just in terms of the expenditure for Q4 for the financial year, we could see on slide 1, there was an increase in terms of expenditure in terms of rand value, but there was in terms of the percentage, we're a little bit lower than the prior financial year. It's 97 to 99%. And the underspending for the 22-23 financial year was accumulated to 6.1 billion. And when we'll get to the slides, I will exactly indicate where was the underspending for this financial year. Next slide. So this is our quarterly spending. We started in the Q1 fairly slow because of the slow uptake of the SRD in April to June. And then it picked up in Q3, 4, and 5. You can see that our Q4, 62 billion. Again, it's because of the payments that we did to SRD, but it's also related to the amounts that was declared as savings by the National Treasury for the prior financial year. Next slide. So if we look at the programs and economic classification, you can see that all of our major programs have spent almost 100% of its allocated budget, except for Program 2, Social Assistance, where the 6 billion is indicated in terms of the SRD. In our economic classifications, our underspending on compensation of employees is amount to 9.9 million, but you need to recall that we've received additional 15 million for the cost of living as part of the adjusted estimates for the financial year for the inflationary increases that we got for salaries. Then on goods and services, we did fairly well. We've spent 95.9% of our allocation. The only saving that we had there was 19 million, and this amount has been requested as rollover for the financial year. Then in terms of transfers and subsidies, we've transferred all of our allocations in terms of the agencies. The foreign payments, there's only a 1.1 million that we underspent, and that's because of the foreign exchange rates that kept on fluctuating. The NPOs, there was only one institution that was not paid in the prior financial year due to non-compliance. And there you could see the households, which relates to the SRD, was 5.8 million. The payment for capital assets was 3.9 million underspending. We didn't do a second procurement of laptops, bulk procurement of laptops. We did individually, and that was a small saving for the financial year. And then payment of financial assets. We did got approval from the National Treasury to write off some of our assistance debtors, but also in terms of normal debtors for the department. There we can only see the 209 million, but that was actually a given, but it's not recorded in our books. That was part of the SIU debtors that was recorded in terms of that. So in total, we have underspent by 6.1 million for the financial year. The next slide. There's just mainly the reasons per program. If you look, program 1, I've spent 99.7%. There was operational spendings, but also I explained in terms of the capital assets. The social assistance, it's mainly related to the SRD 350. When we got the allocation in the prior financial year, we've made provision for between 10 and 11 million beneficiaries that would have applied. That was not the case because of the increased means test. Only about 7 million applied per month, and that was a saving for the financial year. The underspendings on social security, 99.7%. The amount that was saved, underspent in that financial year is because we are still having delays in terms of the inspectorate, the implementation for the social assistance inspectorate. For welfare services, just go one back. For welfare services, 94%. We've looked at our outreach programs in the financial year, and we've implemented some cost-saving measures, and that's why therefore there was an underspending. The same principle goes to program 5. Next slide. If we look, however, if we exclude now all our transfers and the big ticket items, we are in a fairly better position than we were in the prior financial year. In the 21-22, we were at 85% spending, and for 22-23, we had 96% spending. So we did fairly well in terms of our operational expenditure. Next. This is just the breakdown for the various programs. If we exclude the budget transfers, the only area for underspending is only related to social security, 81%, but that's a result of the inspectorate that's been delayed. Next. Again, looking at compensation versus goods and services, how did we spend per quarter? Our COE was fairly stagnant over the financial year. The goods and services, we've started slow in the first quarter and picked up in the last 3 quarters of the financial year. Next. So if we strip now just the goods and services, because this is where the bulk of our expenditure incurred for operations, you can see on goods and services, all major programs have actually spent almost of its budget, except for social security, but it's a very small budget of 26 allocation and only 16 spent, and that 62% relates to the inspectorate delays. Next. Just the last slide just indicates on what specific major ticket items that we spend it on. The amount of 90 million on communication, and the committee would recognize that we've mentioned that we had to pay for the Telkom toll-free line. We did receive money from SASSA administration to fund this bill. It was in the region of about 83 million. We've received that allocation, so that's why for communication it was 90 million for the prior financial year. And then on travel and subsistence, 76 million in terms of the major spending items. Thanks. Next one. So Chairperson, it is recommended that the portfolio note the department's program's performance against its predetermined objectives, as well as the expenditure for Q4 for the 22-23 financial year. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone? Mr. Mkhunu?
No, Chair, thank you very much. I think that gives the summation of the both the performance as well as the financials performance for the Q4. And we're happy to then take questions from honorable members and respond accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mkhunu. Honorable members, that's the presentation done by the department. Let's get into it and deliberate it. Or any comment? I'll start with Honorable Van der Merwe, followed by Bridget Masango, followed by Alex, and then I'll take the other group of friends. Over to you, Van der Merwe.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning to you and good morning to the ADG and his team, to the Minister and the Deputy Minister if she's online. Chairperson, I think, first I want to start by thanking the department for the presentation this morning. However, I want to make an appeal going forward when we do deal with quarterly reports. And I know this is a Q4 report, so obviously, you know, things would have developed after that. But remember in our BRRR or our budget vote report that we debated yesterday and was tabled to Parliament, we did make a recommendation that we should be regularly updated in terms of the department's vacancy rate, as well as how far they go in terms of consequence management and investigations as per the issues that have been raised by the AG. And I think once we do these quarterly reports, if we can just engage with those issues, that would also be important. Otherwise, they roll over and we only deal with them again every time the budget votes come around. Then I think one comment that I would like to make is on the issues of whenever we get these presentations, every time there is a number of bills that are in the process of being finalized, but seemingly I feel that it keeps on being rolled over. So there's never really any progress in terms of some of these bills. But with regard to the entity oversight, I did see a mention there. I think it was DDG Buthelezi that reported on entity oversight, and he mentioned that they have been doing oversight with regards to obviously SASSA, but we keep on highlighting the issues around the challenges at SASSA, and in particular with its working relationship with SAPO. The offices closing, the telephone lines that don't work. And it's something that we keep on highlighting. The telephone lines in most of these SASSA offices don't work. We keep on highlighting the issues around service delivery challenges at these offices, the fact that there's no generators, the fact that there's no chairs and toilets, and just generally the queue management for the elderly, for example. And I think we need to also at one stage maybe focus more on this. On the slide again, and I'm going to ask this again because we keep on asking that, but for example, on slide 28, we heard about the anti-gangsterism strategy and interventions in high-risk districts for this quarter. I wanted to know what were the high-risk districts for this quarter. And then I want to know whether you do an assessment impact after you've rolled out these strategies or interventions. For example, there was a mention that you were in the Western Cape, but for example, have we gone back to see whether these interventions that you have rolled out previously have had any impact or success? You know, I'm particularly thinking now also about the community of Westbury, where there's so many struggles in terms of gangsterism and how it affects children. And you know, as much as we need to obviously, you know, focus on the entire country, surely we should be focusing on critical areas such as Westbury, and obviously more sustained interventions in areas like the Cape Flats. Again, you know, I worry because there was a slide that says, you know, we've successfully rolled out some program, and there was a name that, you know, to curb teenage pregnancies. But again, teenage pregnancies keep rising. There was a intervention around capacity for sheltering, HIV programs, and then again this issue of capacitating, you know, substance abuse centers. And again, you know, substance abuse centers in the main, for me at least, you know, they're absent, or interventions in terms of drug abuse or substance abuse in communities are largely absent, or it's not visible. And maybe also, Chairperson, I think at one point we as a committee must embark on an oversight visit to some of these substance abuse centers, and even just some of the shelters that are being capacitated, so that we can see firsthand in terms of these interventions that the department keeps telling us about, black and white here. Finally, slide 40. There was a mention about child malnutrition and how you're able to that you do obviously provide food support for struggling communities. But I want to know whether, because child malnutrition is rising, and whether you're able to target the communities. In other words, do you know, for example, in which communities child malnutrition has been rising, and therefore target your intervention to those communities? And finally, slide 43, with regards to the listing of our country, money laundering, and the ADG spoke at the beginning that we've given ourselves as a country 1 year to lift ourselves out of this grey listing. But then there was a mention of the NPO Act, the finalization of the NPO Act. So if we want to get ourselves out of grey listing within the next year, it means this act would have to be finalized within the next year. So just timeframes on that as well. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Lizelle. The next speaker. Mama Bridget.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the department for the presentation. Chairperson, just before I get into the actual presentation, questions about the presentations that were made this morning, I just want to, as I congratulate the minister and the deputy minister and colleagues that were able to go to the post-budget vote events, I just have a general request to make that these notices, when we are being invited to these very important events, that the notices are advanced enough for one to prioritize these things, because I believe that they are very important and they need to be prioritized. So if the notices can be not like in the week that they are happening, because I know with the feedback that the chairperson presented this morning, that it has taken time, sufficient time to actually prepare for these events, for them to be as successful as we hear they were. It's just a request, because it is impossible to honor these invitations if you hear a few days before the actual event takes place. So that is my request, Chairperson. And then going into and also another request that I wanted to make, if it was possible, for example, the ADG to have standing items, the items that are raised by the AGSA, for example, as being of concern, because some of them may not be directly part of